Kia ora, bua, kia rana, talofa, maloelele, and welcome to Tupalangi and the Pisanisi Pod. And Dave, what a special day to be with you today on your birthday. So, ra ano mataora. Happy birthday to you. My name's Glenn Murphy. I'm here on Waiheke Island in Aotearoa, and I am with the birthday boy who was in Rarotonga.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. It's been a great day. I've been behind the dateline, of course, as we record. It's your Saturday. My birthday, New Zealand time, was yesterday, July the 10th.
And I did wish you a happy birthday yesterday, which was my mistake, but never mind.
No, not at all. No, you and half the world, really. It felt like. So, no, thank you very much to everyone, including many listeners of this show, actually, who've been in touch to express their birthday wishes. And it was quite a special one this year because it's coincided, of course, with the Matariki, the Māori New Year as well. So, it was very nice. I went along to a special function yesterday for Matariki here in Rarotonga, and that nicely coincided with my birthday eve.
That's right. The New Zealand High Commissioner threw a birthday party for you, which is fantastic of her.
It was very good of her. Yeah, it was amusingly and coincidentally, last year's Matariki, because it changes, of course, with the rising of the Matariki star cluster. It coincided with her birthday. She had the Prime Minister of Cook Islands, Mark Brown, sing her happy birthday. So,
that's special.
Fortunately, I didn't experience that last night, but she did. She did mention that it was my birthday coming up today.
Oh dear, very cool. Well, in a minute, Dave, in this episode, we're going to play a pre-recorded talanoa with John Stokes from Eat the Kiwi. But first, before we go into that, what else has been happening in your week apart from the birthday accord?
Apart from the birthday and the celebrations leading up to it, well, this has been quite a big week, I think, across the Pacific, but particularly in Rarotonga. We've got it being school holidays in New Zealand, of course. This is peak travel for Kiwis coming across to this part of the world, and I've got a couple of very good friends who are visiting Rarotonga this week. So we'll be catching up with them this evening. But also we had a group from another of our loyal listeners to the show, the team from McConnell Dowell Constructors. So the McConnell Dowell Construction Company, of course, was in Rarotonga this week, and will be in Rarotonga for some months to come, because they are building the new New Zealand High Commission. Chancery building. It's called a chancery. For those who aren't up with the diplomatic lingo, that's the building that houses an embassy is called a chancery, and that will host both the New Zealand High Commission and the Australian High Commission, who's a tenant within the building. And the groundbreaking ceremony for that took place yesterday, just before the Matariki function. So we had Fraser Wiley, the managing director of McConnell Dowell New Zealand and Pacific, over, along with 3 or 4 of his sort of senior executive team, presiding over yesterday's groundbreaking ceremony with the New Zealand, the Australian High Commissioner, the Ariki, which is the local sort of paramount chief of the tribe that owns the land on which the chancery is being constructed, and of course the Cook Islands Prime Minister Mark Brown, who spoke very generously of what it means for the relationship between New Zealand and Cook Islands and taking that forward. It's a little bit of an in-house race between McConnell Dowell, because they've got teams also working in Suva and in Port Moresby, constructing new chancery buildings for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade of New Zealand. So new New Zealand High Commission in Fiji and new New Zealand High Commission in Port Moresby, all at the same time. Now, those other 2 projects have commenced slightly earlier than this one. So they've got a couple of months head start, but they're slightly more challenging. The site in Suva, for those who might have been there before, it's being built on what was the residence of the New Zealand High Commissioner. It also is a historical site, because the New Zealand Air Force used to have a very significant presence in that area. There's all of these ancient gun emplacements and bunkers and tunnels and things like that through the site, so they have to contend with that, and they're incorporating it into the site. So I saw a picture yesterday of the 24/7 camera that they've got up, showing what that excavated gun emplacement now looks like, and it's quite huge. It takes up, pretty much the entire area of what used to be the, I guess, reception area of the High Commissioner's residence there. And that's all being exposed, and they're putting a glass floor over it so that people will be able to look down and see it.
how cool.
in the new building. So, yeah, lots of that to contend with. So I think the guys in Rarotonga are quietly hoping that, theirs will be a bit more straightforward and they might be able to, touch wood, overtake some of their colleagues in other parts of the region.
Well, Dave, as the weekend come, the long weekend for Matariki, obviously, so enjoying that and doing what one does on Matariki, which is both reflect and look ahead to the year to come and eat kai with friends and families.
No, it's a fantastic holiday, isn't it? I think a lot of that was being talked about yesterday at the official function up at the High Commissioner's place, and there was a great reflection from a man by the name of Mark Takani from the New Zealand Navy and working over in Rarotonga. Actually working with the Australians because they fund the Pacific Patrol Boat program and have a Guardian-class patrol boat stationed here with the Cook Island Police Force. And so Mark has seconded into that to support that. But he offered some really good reflections on, what Matariki means, what the 7 or 9 or however many stars you choose to count in the cluster all stand for. They had a themed dinner that had elements representing each of the stars, from the Waiti, the freshwater, Waita, the saltwater, Tupuanuku, Tupuarangi, the vegetables of the ground, vegetables of the forest. And so, really cool to reflect on that significance. And of course, also, I think the ancestral connection between Cook Islands and New Zealand. At the groundbreaking ceremony yesterday, the chiefly leader was saying that the waka, the canoes that left for New Zealand with Māori departed from the Avana Passage here in Rarotonga. So there is that sort of 800 to 900 year connection between both those countries. And of course, Matariki is a shared celebration across the Pacific. So it really resonates well, and it's something that, people across this region understand well and get behind.
Hey, Dave, let's head into the Talanoa with John. And John's somebody that both of us have known for a while now and has had a business operating in the Pacific for quite some time. So do you just want to introduce the Talanoa for us?
I think it was probably a nice little segue, me talking about the food that we ate last night, because, of course, John Stokes has had a business for a long time that is a name that'll be familiar, I guess, to people that have travelled around the Pacific and also into Asia as well, which is called Eat the Kiwi. Now, he's not serving kiwi as a dish, but rather it's of course a metaphor. But he has specialised, I suppose, in bringing premium food out of New Zealand and into markets where it might not otherwise have been understood or known. And John is operating a business called Dynamic Foods in Vanuatu, but he also oversees a franchise operation run by Steve and Katie in Samoa, which is under the Eat the Kiwi brand. The main business, of course, is not so much retail, but actually stocking into resorts, and cruise ships and super yachts. So, yeah, really exciting Talanoa, and I think there'll be quite a bit of interest in it. Well, we spend a lot of time on Tūpalangi and a Pisanesi pod talking about things like infrastructure and tourism. And one of the areas that we haven't really covered quite so much has been the movement of food around the region. And we've had some great conversations with previous guests, such as Jennifer Boggess from Halala Vanilla, who's talked about the challenges and opportunities of growing a food business out of the Pacific. And one of the other areas that I know is of keen interest to a lot of New Zealand, Australian and Pacific businesses is the business of moving food around the region, and the logistics, supply chain and retailing operations that make that possible. And so we're delighted to be joined today by a special guest who's certainly well known to both of the Tūpalangi, and I'm sure will be well known to many of our listeners as well, and that is John Stokes. Now, John has a very rich and interesting story that we'll be discussing today, but among other things, many other things, John has been very involved in the food distribution and wholesaling business around the Pacific. He is the founder of the Eat the Kiwi franchise operation. He is also operationalizing the Dynamic Foods business over in Vanuatu, wholesaling high-end New Zealand, Australian and produce from around the region, but is of course also moving into domestic manufacture and production over there as well. So it is a pleasure to have John on the pod today. John, welcome. and it's great to see you again.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, great to see you and Glenn. Yeah, we've had a good long history. So yeah, fun to be able to talk to you guys today, tell a bit of story, and maybe share some war stories.
Yeah, great to see you again, John, after quite a few years. But yeah, thank you for coming on the show with us today.
And before we start, we have to commend you as well on the shirt. So, of course, John is resplendent today in a buller shirt. Or what do they call them in Vanuatu, John? If it's not, it wouldn't be buller, I suppose.
Well, I call it our Christmas shirt. It's our Nivan Vanuatu shirt. Every year, the girls in our office come up with a new coloured shirt. Everyone gets it, and so this is the last year's shirt. So I thought it was appropriate. I love it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Not just appropriate, very, very stunning shirt. And I'm sure anyone who's listening to this will be keen to jump on the YouTube channel and check it out to see what it actually looks like.
Yeah.
John, what we usually like to do with our guests on the show is get them to start by talking a little bit about themselves and their story. And so I wonder if we could touch as briefly or as long as you like on the John Stokes story.
My story is I got into the food distribution game or supplying restaurants in Auckland. That's 20 odd years ago. We ended up finding a niche, which was to supply the premium end of the market. In our peak, we were employing 200 people and supplying probably 1,200 restaurants on a daily basis. The claim to fame was we got to 46 of the top 50 restaurants as our customers, primarily supplying them fruit and vegetables. We couldn't get the Japanese restaurants. They would just deal amongst themselves. They were the ones I could never get. But so that was where my life started. The second part of how it relates to the Pacific is my love of surfing. Luckily enough, I've spent a bit of time surfing through the Pacific. I got a boat with a friend of mine prior to doing this food business, and we sailed to Fiji and had an absolute magical time. We were just welcomed with open arms by the Fijian community. Lost the boat, got trespassed off an island. We had all sorts of entertaining dramas. But that was probably the start of my joy and love of the Pacific.
And how did you lose the boat, John? Was it a card game or what?
I don't think I can fully tell that story, but let's just say I was on the dance floor at Beachcomber Island, and I ended up talking to someone saying, "Isn't it great? We're on the high seas, loving this life. How is the boat doing?" Which was parked right outside the front, she said it's not there, which of course then changed the dynamics of how I was feeling straight away. But it had broken the mooring and drifted off out to sea. So that's a very sobering moment right there. As we found the boat, we had a magical time. Fiji was beautiful, and that was such a good eye opener for me to actually head into two directions. The first was with the knowledge of the sailing, I ended up, and still to this day, have a very big part of our business in the looking after of super yachts and private yachts. So I ended up going, luckily with a surfboard all the time, all over the Pacific following super yachts. That next extension from that was then, why don't we go and set up a business in the Pacific? The first one we went to, and we're still there, was Vanuatu, and that was subsequently followed by Samoa, where we've got Eat the Kiwi in Samoa and Dynamic in Vanuatu. Today, Vanuatu employs over 40 people, and we provide to the resorts and, as I said, the super yachts when they come to town, cafe industry, restaurants, and in Samoa, it's Eat the Kiwi, and we do a similar type of business.
Are you still predominantly bringing everything out of New Zealand, or have you changed the operation, and are you still focusing on the yachts?
We understood what we were doing in New Zealand with the supply to the restaurants. The super yachts initiated we need to learn how to get product from New Zealand to wherever the super yachts were. And of course, the framework wasn't built for a billionaire saying, "Can I please have 2 bottles of organic milk?" you
Yeah.
know, and that was me going to Fonterra, you know, very massive 20% of New Zealand's, you know, GDP, saying, hey, can I have a health certificate to get 2 bottles of milk? It is really tricky because every country you go into has different rules. And, you know, understandably, they've been built for protection of industry, they've been built for protection of biosecurity concerns. But through, I guess, you know, learning that, then it went to, wait a minute, how can we do that produce company business in those markets? And so one of the things that I've been lucky enough to do in my journey is have smart people around me. And they go, John, slow down. Go and get all these experts to help you research and do your market research. And those experts are you guys. They're all, yeah, there you go, pat on your back.
You are in trouble.
Good plug.
You like that, don't you? Those experts are also, you know, consultants who you pay a fee for. And we had one in particular, Debbie Humphreys. There you go. Shout out to Debbie and Aaron. And, you know, she pulled apart what we were trying to do, where we should go, how we should go, and all the desktop research to make sure that we knew where to go. I was lucky, not so much. Well, I was lucky in Samoa because I'd been surfing there for 10 years. And so I had always, over those 10 years, had my eyes open to the market and how would it work and whatever. But I was also lucky when we went into Vanuatu that I met a guy, once again surfing. His name is Blake Crop. And he had been working supplying the Pacific with a trading model of food. So there's lots of trading houses that basically have operated out of New Zealand. When I met him surfing, he said, I'm going to go and do it myself. I think I can do something better. And so it was his knowledge that got me into Vanuatu. Now, how different is it from when we started? Not much, really. You know, we've got slightly bigger buildings. We're employing more people. The one thing that I would say is in our early discovery, we identified that we wanted 3 phases to go into the business. The first was the launch phase, and we knew that because of our experience, we could get the suppliers from New Zealand to be able to export into us. That is actually a big problem for a lot of people because the supply channel is so important. So you can imagine most people who are in the Pacific, when they pick up the phone and call Fonterra and say, can I have some milk and I want to be a client? It's really tricky. The second part was really important for us. We wanted to get away from everything being on the menu from overseas. We all go on holidays. We sit in these places, wonderful settings, beautiful people, and, you know, the whole menu is full of New Zealand and Australia or overseas stuff. That's not how it should be. So our second phase was to set up local distribution. And we've got a range of local growers, providers, you know, fishermen. In Vanuatu, they've got a beef industry. Let's get that on the menu. And then the third phase was to figure out as we go, is there an opportunity for us to start exporting them back to New Zealand, to where we have a business, or back to the other Pacific?
Hey, John, just thinking about the evolution of what you've seen in market. And Dave and I actually were in Fiji about 18 months ago, and we were talking to a lot of the resorts and restaurants, and just seemed to me that their demands were changing and what they were asking for in terms of quality of supply. So just wondering whether you've seen that in Samoa and Vanuatu as well.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And for us, it fell right into our sweet spot. Over years, we've basically lifted the menu and the quality from our point of view to our customers. It's also been the driven and the demand from the customer. And to your point, now what we're seeing, especially in Fiji, we're seeing you know, large international companies now seeing the market and buying in. There's people who have varying tastes, from, you know, vegan, gluten-free, you know, all the different you know, things. Now this is all basically becoming mainstream on the menus, and chefs need to do that. So I think we're in a really good space across the whole Pacific with the improvement of food for this space.
Another great shout out to Blake Crop, who, of course, as many might be aware, is now in Fiji, having taken over the 5-star food franchise with Markwell Foods over there. There'll be a few people listening into this who may have a smallish or even a medium-sized sort of premium food business going in New Zealand or Australia, and it might be making them think, oh, hey, I wonder if there is an opportunity out there in Fiji or Vanuatu or Samoa or across the Pacific. What are the things that they need to be thinking about? What do people commonly get wrong, and what can they do to make better decisions if they're trying to grow their business into the region?
Small fish taste sweet. There you go. That's the answer. So we took off where I met Glenn first time. We're going to Hong Kong. Bigger company, bigger things, and I can tell you now, Hong Kong 10 years later is only now starting to produce the rewards of what we have ended up in the Pacific. So I think there's an attitude that we must go to the bigger countries, Europe, America, Asia, and let's go. Right on our doorstep is the small fish. The tricky part is, how do you start supplying, let's say, the Pacific, and where do you go? So obviously most people probably will go where they've been on holiday, and they'll think, oh, well, hey, why don't we get our product in there? So you need to understand who are the local distributors who you could work with. Nothing beats getting on the plane and going and doing and knocking on doors. The tricky part is the Pacific with multiple countries. It's quite a cost for companies to go, all right, okay, yep, we'll send you to Samoa, we'll send you to Vanuatu, we'll send you to Fiji, we'll send you to Tonga. You can see about that versus they go to a trade show in Hong Kong or Singapore or wherever, and they capture a lot more business. Well, that's the perception. So time in the market, understanding the research, getting over there, they're all the sort of the key things. There is some difficulties with transportation. The example is, we can do freight up to Hong Kong, which is 11 hours away, 3 times cheaper than sending something to Fiji or Samoa. Bring down your freight rates, then people can, start to export more from that point of view. And also to the freighting companies, the sea freight guys. The cost of sea freight is exponentially more than going in, to Australia. When you go on holiday, you generally throw away the ideas of what you're spending, so they're happy to pay.
When you talk about that ability to pay, have you noticed a change in the profile of customers?
Initially, everyone put it all into the pot, and now you can differentiate the market. So there is super yacht owners. There is people going and staying in high-end Airbnb, much smaller resorts now. You come back to the all-you-can-eat family market. So we've been able to go into a market and play, in that quality premium sort of space versus other companies may come into, a more cheaper, lesser end.
What have been your biggest challenges as you've gone through the last 10 years? And, what do you think you've overcome that's really enabled you to be successful?
The biggest shout out is the people that I've gone into business with, and they create the platform for us to be able to, to operate. So, as I said, I went in with Blake Crop. He went, and we're partners. He went to Vanuatu for 5 years, and then Steve and Katie, my rock stars from Samoa. They've done an unbelievably great job from a business point of view, and I think when you come as let's call us a foreign company into a company going into a foreign country, you have to play a delicate game. You have your business hat on that says, right, we should be able to do everything and whatever, but then there's the reality. You've got to play within the rules of the country, and delicately nudge and work and find relationships and networks and things like that. And we've had all sorts of interesting things. When we arrived in one country, we had a minister knocking on the door saying, please give us money. We've certainly been very strong at trying to grow internally the community, so employing local, which is awesome, and they feel very proud of who we are, and I think that added dimension of our focus of getting local and working with local growers and supporters has helped that.
Yeah, great lessons.
John, you've been very focused on, and you've had specific projects like around limes and muesli as well in a couple of those markets. And I wonder if you just want to talk a little bit about that, and how have you seen, I guess, the challenges that you've had to overcome, and also the potential opportunity that's out there for Pacific producers still.
Both of those examples you've given are really good eye-openers to us all. So I had the hat on in New Zealand and working there whilst I had the hat on in the Pacific. And I could see, wait a minute, we're paying $30 a kilo for limes around Christmas time in New Zealand, and yet we've got amazing limes in Vanuatu. And so we ended up with, I think, about 120 growers growing limes. We consolidated them all, put them all together, washed them, packed them, put them on a plane and sent them to New Zealand. It was amazing, and it worked really well. It was very encouraging. It was an export opportunity, and it was going really well. Sadly, back to my annoyance of freights and things, we were paying $11 a kilo for air freight. And previous government did a free trade agreement with Vietnam, and they could bring the product in for $7 total cost. So literally overnight it stopped, which was really upsetting, because there was great product, really good products that I'd love to figure out how to get them back. I'd like the freighting companies to basically say, look at the long-term thing. Don't charge $10,000 for a container where they have to, bring in 200 kilos of limes or whatever the product is. Help support them. The second one, slightly different. This is the muesli, totally driven by Katie, who's a general manager in Samoa. Through the COVID time, we had all this product that we couldn't sell. She ended up choosing to make muesli, started to get local growers to dehydrate fruits and use local honey, made the muesli, and we started selling it at the farmers market. As everyone was, we were trying to figure out how to have a business. And through that, then it's turned into, we now pretty much employ a team to be solidly making muesli. We're working with the local growers to add that, that fruit and flavor. And we now sell that under the brand Paradiso. We sell it to the resorts. There are companies who can bring back product to New Zealand. Whitaker's Chocolate's another, and then do the processing in New Zealand. And it's a great story if you and it's a welcomed story, certainly in New Zealand, if you attach the Pacific to it. You know what Whitaker's has done with the Samoan chocolate, Halela vanilla from, I think, initially Tonga. We can do more of that, but yeah, if we can get cheaper freight rates, then the game can begin.
There really is a premium associated with the Pacific as a brand, high quality produce, and there should be a lot of kind of latent goodwill there, right? That can be
Yes.
turned into that can be turned into commercial opportunity for some of those growers and processors. And one of the other things I've noticed recently, there's now a new juice range coming into New Zealand from Tonga. I think the Minoru Nishi and his business producing that. You're constantly moving. You're sort of always on the lookout for other opportunities and things. So where does the next chapter sort of come from in the Eat the Kiwi or the Dynamic or the John Stokes story?
We've been exploring how we can do a bit more in each of those markets that we're in. I got very close to getting into Fiji, but now those big international companies are there, Markle Foods and Bid Foods. I think I might just leave them to it. So we'll do that. So I would like to do a bit more of the exploration of the surfing. No, did I say that? A little bit more of the exploration of exporting of products. Right now in Vanuatu, there's some Pacific dragon prawns that is now being caught off Santo. Amazing. And we're trying to figure out how we could export them. We've got a business in Hong Kong. They would love to get the product, but back to the freight thing. That's the tricky thing. And back to, they can only produce a certain amount whilst they grow. And how do we get that so that it's viable.
So we've been talking today to John Stokes, who has been, as we've learned, intimately involved with the food distribution business, not just into but also around and back out of the Pacific. John, I think coming into the closing part of the conversation, but if you had sort of one piece of advice or one thought that you would want to leave with maybe our listeners from either New Zealand, Australia, or from in the Pacific, what would it be?
Don't be scared to go into the Pacific. It's a really good place to play. And the people are magical. I mean, obviously, us three Palangis, we've grown up in New Zealand. We understand the Polynesian culture. People love the Pacific. They're exploring more. And so I would just say, okay, do your research. Go into the market, find your allies, look at all the numbers. The numbers are showing more people are going to be traveling to the Pacific. It's a good opportunity. It's against what you hear. There's a profitable return to be made, but that just takes time. Just take time and just enjoy that.
And on the flip side of that question, John, is there anything you would say just don't do it this way?
We have seen this recently in Vanuatu with a couple of trading companies who have basically gone and, I guess, foolishly gone and sold product and are now not being paid. So they haven't done the research and they got excited on the sale. And then, of course, they'd selected the wrong partners. I want to turn it more into a positive than a negative, is spend some more time going to the markets. It's not too expensive to get on a plane to go to some of these Pacific islands. You can find cheap deals at certain times and go and explore. Don't look at it that, oh, no, I'd rather send my sales rep up to, Asia or America or wherever, which might be your big markets, got it. Go and knock on the door in the Pacific. Go and see the Fijis and, etc., Samoa, Vanuatu's, and understand the market.
Or maybe come out to Piha and catch a wave with you out there, John, and have a chat.
No, I don't want anyone coming surfing with me. I just want them to myself. They can call me. Yeah, I'm happy to chat to anybody if, about I love building networks.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that is entirely in keeping with the ethos of Tūpalangi in a Pisanesi pod. So, once again, it has been a fantastic talanoa today with John Stokes, founder, managing director, and all-round food expert when it comes to selling and trading food in and out of and around the Pacific. John, fantastic to catch up again today. Awesome, I think, to see where your business has gone, both in Asia, where you and Glenn first met one another, but also in the Pacific, where you and I have had most of our connection as well. And of course, to see, not just the opportunity for selling premium product into the region, but also, as you say, to develop the industry, the growing and the export potential around and out of the Pacific as well. So from me, certainly, whawhetai lava and thank you to mas. Thanks for coming on the show.
Kia ora,
Thanks,
John.
guys.
So, Dave, that was John Stokes from Eat the Kiwi and Dynamic Foods. So, very laconic kind of character, our John. Loves his surfing, obviously. And that's been a key part of his business development strategy, surfing and finding people to talk to while he's waiting for a wave. And often seeming to find people who are involved in the food industry and then developing his business as a result. Some of his key messages about, find the right people. Take time, but if you take time and sort of learn the lessons, business will grow. Find your allies, but also, commenting on that difficulty of freighting around the region, which we've covered a little bit in various conversations.
When you're dealing with premium food, so much of it's really air freighted. So, with that new service with Solomon Airlines from Christchurch to Vila, and hopefully many others to come, we might see John's costs of freight going down. But he's absolutely right to signal that it is a huge challenge for not just people trying to send premium food from Australia or New Zealand or elsewhere into the Pacific, but also from the Pacific outwards. One of those things that I really like about John is how optimistic he is and also how innovative he is to think about, where those opportunities can be, because, he's not just someone who's looking to get really nice stuff out of New Zealand into the region. He's also constantly thinking about some of the fantastic produce that's out there in the Pacific. And as we saw with that example that he used of the limes in Vanuatu, he's the sort of person that you need really to invest the time to help build up the capacity of not just the growers, but the policy and institutional systems and the certifiers and, the biosecurity systems in order to get those back into more, lucrative sales markets, retail markets in New Zealand. So one of those other areas of how the tourism economy can support so many other different businesses throughout the food chain. And John, I think, really nicely illustrates some of the potential in that sector.
Yeah, so it's great to talk to him. And as I sort of mentioned in the Talanoa, I hadn't seen John for quite some years, but I know you've been working with him. So it was great to have that sit down and chat with him. Hey, Dave, we in this show are all about business, but it would seem remiss that we don't just at least acknowledge the big news of the week, which was the Chinese missile firing.
It's certainly been in the media, as you say, Glenn. That action of firing a missile. It's hard to think of something that's kind of more confronting to this part of the world. Of course, the Pacific is fundamentally an ocean of peace. That's literally what the name means. And it's also, I think, the very firm commitment of every single Pacific Island Forum member to that idea. There is a Treaty of Rarotonga, which applies throughout the region, which effectively bans nuclear weaponry. You'd have to say contrary to the spirit, if not the letter of that. And I think it's been rightly condemned by everyone in the region.
Yeah, and it is quite difficult to understand the motivations for why it happened. Observers have linked it to some of the recent workings last week of the Australian government in the Pacific, and linking it loosely to the signing of the agreement with Fiji, where Fiji has now become an ally of Australia. Lots of business activity going on last week with Australia as well, in terms of the government signing new agreements and being very, very active. They're putting some money into Fijian rugby, which is, I guess, very welcomed by people like the Drua.
I'm not a geopolitical commentator, but it's certainly a fact that the missile firing happened pretty closely in time to the announcement that was made around the signature of that. Or the elevation of that Vuvale partnership between Australia and Fiji to a treaty-level status and a formal alliance. It's a pretty telling contrast to have seen just that incredible effort that Australia has put in sending its top leaders to connect face-to-face and in person, to announce very significant investment, to announce elevations of, those partnerships in Fiji, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and also I think the Puk Puk Treaty with Papua New Guinea has now come into effect as well. To contrast that very real personal human connection and investment that Australia is putting in, and good on them, with the actions of just covertly firing something into the region. Two very, very different approaches, and I think people will be looking at that very, very tellingly. But back to that Australian stuff, what a great series of developments, not just for Australia, but for the entire Pacific region. I think, people probably don't appreciate how much Australia does do in the region. I say this as a Kiwi, but it provides well over half of the entire development spend in the region. They've done incredible work in a whole range of different areas, from healthcare to education to sport. And we've known a lot about what's been happening in places like Papua New Guinea with its rugby league investment there, but to see that also being matched in investments in rugby union in Fiji. So it's fantastic to see the Fijian Drua receiving some of that support, and of course the Drua also get some support from the New Zealand government through its Drua Foundation, its development pathway initiative in Fiji as well. So, to our friends at the Drua, especially Josefa, former guest on the show, very good personal friend of yours and mine, congratulations, and, really looking forward to seeing what that investment can do to support that franchise and Fiji and the region more broadly.
Yeah, and as you say, Dave, it's across a range of things. I noticed they on Solomon's Independence Day, they announced a new investment, or a continuing investment, I think, in the Naha Health Centre in the Solomons.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the Naha Birthing Clinic has been a long-standing priority in Honiara. I think the other big thing that was announced as part of the Solomon Islands treaty was a huge education initiative. And, one of the major political ambitions of the new Prime Minister, Matthew Wale, when he came in, was to make education free for Solomon Island Solomon Island kids. And so I think, Australia is quite clearly supporting that. And you can see some of that investment being made into the education side of Solomon Islands. And you might remember when we spoke to Jay Bartlett of Hatanga Construction from the Solomon Islands couple of weeks ago, he mentioned just how young Sol's population is, and Matthew Finlay as well, who we spoke to last week from Solomon Airlines, talked about it's 750,000 people. I think that makes it the third largest population in the Pacific, and something like 40% of it's under the age of 40, or it's a young population, and so investing in the education is going to be you'd hope a game changer for that country and for the region as a whole.
Yeah, and I saw also as one of the announcements was an upgraded investment in skills development across Fiji and Timor-Leste, about $180 million over the next 4 years.
So again, this is one of those. This is one of those areas that actually Australia's been supporting for quite a long time, through an organisation called what was APTC, the Australia Pacific Training Coalition. And that has been kind of implemented by various contracting organisations. I know Queensland TAFE had a role in it for quite some time, but it's evident that investment is being increased. Probably through the same platform, and providing those sort of TAFE, or what we would call polytech skills, into trades training and other particular sectors as well. And I saw a good friend of mine, Gareth McGrath, who is the head of the APTC in Suva, explaining, I think, what the significance of that new investment would be for Fiji.
So, Dave, big wins this week for Australia across the region with all sorts of announcements. What else have you picked up that's going on in the week to come?
We should add as well, I did see New Zealand's Prime Minister Luxon talking about New Zealand exploring very closely becoming a party to some of those agreements that Australia's signed in the region. But as we say, this is not a show about politics, but of course there is a lot of that happening in the region, and I think we're probably going to see a lot more of it over the next 5 or 6 weeks. This is kind of peak political season for the Pacific, because everyone is gearing up towards the annual meeting of the Pacific Island Forum leaders. This year it's taking place at the end of August through to the start of September. It will be held in Palau under the theme of building economies and life. A very, very heavy focus on that economic development throughout the region. Palau has some very, very significant investment going into infrastructure, both digital as well as marine and ports and the like. Palau being one of those countries that's in free association with the United States. So they're a compact, called the Compact of Free Association. So they have a very strong US connection. And of course, President Whipps is himself, dual American Palauan heritage. And as usual with these leaders meetings, they're preceded by a whole range of senior officials and different ministers from various portfolios. I think there's like an ICT ministers meeting coming up at some point soon. We've of course had the finance and economic ministers meeting that happened a couple of weeks ago up in Marshall Islands. The fisheries ministers, as we mentioned last week, met recently in Wellington. So all of these are kind of, leading up towards the big leaders level engagement at the end of August. And, I think over the next few weeks, I think we can stay tuned for quite a few more announcements about regional connectivity and regional investment.
Out of these things do come business opportunities, and that's, of course, why they're worthwhile keeping an eye on, and what we'll be certainly looking for in terms of, what does come out that is relevant for business.
When we think about business in the region, a lot of it is what you and I would call B2G, but business to government, because, of course, much of the large-scale work that occurs in the region, whether it's, our friends at McConnell Dowell building bridges and, new embassy buildings and things like that, or whether it's, other businesses in the ICT, fintech sort of space, looking at delivering kind of online digitization type services, the government's going to be a major client. Having a business eye on what some of these agenda items are and some of the decisions that come out of these meetings will be relevant and will be worthwhile keeping in touch with. And certainly I know a couple of the guests that we have coming up over the coming weeks will be, from the business community, but also very, very much, focused on some of the key decision points that are coming out of these configurations.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to some of those upcoming talanoa, Dave. I know the guest we have next week's going to be particularly exciting. But on that note, perhaps we should close up a Tūpalangi and a Pisanisi pod for the week. Would you like to read us out?
I certainly would, Glenn. It's been a fantastic week and culminating in my birthday and with Matariki. So it's been, a real pleasure. And as I said at the start of the show, one of the most special things has been hearing from, so many friends, but also listeners of this podcast who have wished me happy birthday or just got in touch. And of course, talking about some of the things that we've been talking through on the show and other ideas about things that we could cover in the future. We have a really, really exciting pipeline of guests lined up over the next couple of weeks and, of course, the next few months. And it's fantastic to be able to profile those stories through this show. You can please feel free to keep getting in touch with us through our social media channels. LinkedIn is, of course, the main one that we use, but also any of the other ones where you know how to get in touch with us. Or you can email us at our dedicated Gmail address, tu.palagi, Palagi, @gmail.com. It is truly awesome having this engagement with not just you, Glenn, but all of our listeners every week, and we're really, really excited to keep doing so. But in the meantime, this has been Tūpalangi in a Pisanisi pod for the week ending, 11th of July.
Well, July 10 where you are, my birthday friend.